This is the latest session on our hearing for 149 King Street. This is a continued hearing. I understand that there has been some more material that came in at the end of last month, or shortly after the last meeting, and another item that came across late this afternoon. So Adam, do you want to get us started?
Thank you, Chair McMorris. Good evening. My name is Adam Brodsky, and I represent the applicant, PSI Atlantic Acquisition 8 LLC. And before we begin, I note that Mr. Higginson is not attending, although he was expected. I think we need him for this matter, so we're fine if you wish to take another matter ahead of us on the agenda to allow him more time to attend.
Okay, Julia, there's nothing, we don't not expect him. Is that correct?
He picked up his packet earlier today, so
Okay.
he should be joining.
All right, fine. If that's okay with you, Adam, that's fine with us.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So let's move this hearing down a couple of spots and let's move on to 33 Forest Notch. And Julia, who's coming up on this one?
Jennifer Bernsteel is their applicant representative.
Hi.
Okay. Hi, hello.
I'm going to
Um,
recuse myself.
Is there anyone else appearing with you?
If Jesse or Laura Sierras is there, then you could promote them also.
I'm not seeing them in the attendees.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so the floor is yours.
Okay. As we mentioned last time, we're looking to do a second floor addition over an existing garage, and we're looking for a special permit based on the fact that the existing garage falls within the side yard setback, and so we're looking for relief from that in order to add the second floor and a second story balcony, which I can share if that makes it easier.
That would make it easier, thank you.
Okay. So this is the area in question. So the first floor garage already exists. We're adding a small balcony that's 6 by 10 off the back and putting a second floor over the existing footprint of both the mudroom and the garage. And this is the elevation, which shows what we're adding on. And this shows the rear elevation, and it's this corner that's in question, and I'm going to share the site plan also. So this is the site plan, and this is the corner of the garage on the second floor that's in question, and the new deck that's above, that's also in question. As we discussed last time, this is a treed lot back here. So this addition isn't really visible from this side at all. And I do have pictures of the site if you need me to share that as well.
Okay, so anyone on the board want to see the pictures of the trees?
We tried to keep the, we didn't make the addition. I'm going to go back to the plan too. We were careful to not make the addition higher than the existing house, so that we were making its nonconformity as less invasive as possible.
And do you have a calculation on the addition, on the increase in the
I do.
non-conforming facade and et cetera?
Um, so this is the application.
Mhm.
So the rear yard setback stays the same. All the setbacks stay the same, and the existing building height is 22.4 and the new building height is 22.4, and it changes from 15% to 15.89% for structural coverage, and from 8.7% to 9.59% for building coverage. And and this is the floor area. So the non-conforming living area is 2.28%.
Okay, and have you had an opportunity, or has anyone discussed this with the neighbor behind you?
You know, I'm not sure. I think, I don't know if they've discussed it with the neighbor behind them because they're not visible. I believe that Lee said she is actually the neighbor to the left of them. I don't think the neighbor to the back was visible, and I'm not sure that the neighbor to the right is visible either.
Okay. Very good. Is there any new material that you wish to share, or are we all set?
I think we're all set.
All right. Anyone on the board have any questions or comments?
No, I don't have any.
I don't have any.
Okay, and I don't see any hands up in the audience. Do you, Julia?
Not seeing any hands.
Okay, so can I have a motion to continue this hearing?
Or
Um,
actually, close it.
Actually, we have a draft
We
decision.
have a draft. Okay, I guess we can close it then, right? So do I have a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor of closing the hearing? Dave McMorris, aye. Matt Watkins,
Aye.
Woody Chidick,
Aye.
and I think that's it. Lee's.
No, I'm here.
Oh,
Apologies. I had some computer issues, real shocker there. And, as a result, even though I wanted to join, a little before 7, I was unable to for about 10 minutes. So, anyway, I'm glad to be here, obviously, and I'm, gonna be able to vote aye as well.
All right, and Lee is recused on this one. All right, so Forest Notch is closed, and we will deliberate on this later this evening. It's 33 Forest Notch. Next, we have a special permit for a dock at 80 North Main Street. Who's coming forward on this one?
Carmen Hudson of Campos Hudson Engineering.
All right,
Yeah, Jennifer, I guess just for your knowledge, we have a draft decision that we deliberate on later.
Okay.
Now that it's closed.
Okay. And should I stay on for that decision?
I mean, the public participation component of it is closed.
Okay,
So
you can watch us talk about it if you want.
okay.
Okay, so is Carmen?
I am.
There you are. Hi.
Hi. I'm sorry. I didn't want to interrupt, but I think you've already introduced my project, correct? 80 North Main Street.
Yes.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's good to be back. I don't know if you would like me to share the site plan with you. You might remember, but
That's always
just
good to put it up.
put it up. So this is the dock that you saw last time. It's a very short dock, very close to the town hall. It's a 4 by 20 foot long dock with a 3 by 24 foot ramp and a 10 by 16 float, very similar to the one next door. I remember, Matt, you were looking into the decision for the dock next door. There's a total of 6 piles that will be supporting this pier. 4 of them will be below mean high water and 2 of them will be above mean high water. There were no questions the last time, and this has received an order of conditions. I do have one question, and I was hoping that Adam could answer it, but oh, I'm sorry, he has actually answered it. Okay, thank you, Adam, if you're listening. So my only concern with closing this hearing tonight is that the board is a 6, and maybe you have guidance for this, that this is a 6-member board, and there are 3 voting members, and for a special permit we need a supermajority, and for a 3-member board we would need 3 voting members. So I am just concerned about Charlie not being here.
Well,
Where-
it's, what we generally do in a situation like this is that one of the associate members moves up to a voting membership.
Oh, okay,
With an
okay,
absence of a voting member.
okay.
Okay?
I was very nervous about that.
So we'll have 3 voters.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for answering that. Other than that, if you have any questions since the last time, I would be happy to answer them.
I don't have any. Any other board members have anything they want to ask?
No, I don't know.
No.
All right, anyone in the audience have any comments? None? Okay. Is there a draft on this one, Julia?
Yes.
Okay, so I would move that we close this hearing.
Woody Chidick seconds.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to close the hearing on the 80 North Main Street dock. Dave McMorris, aye. Matt Watkins.
Aye.
Mike Dickey, why did you sit as a voting member on this one?
Okay,
Mike Dickey,
yep. Aye.
all right. Woody Chidick
Aye.
and Lee Darst.
Aye.
All right. 80 North Main Street is closed, and Michael, you'll be deliberating and voting on this one, along with Matt and I. Next up,
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
thank you. Next, we have 95 Atlantic Avenue, which is an application for a special permit to expand a single-family dwelling.
Promoting John Kiriaki and
Just wait a second. I've recused myself on this one. Woody
Okay.
Chidick. So please note that.
All right.
Well, Julie, I did just notice, if you didn't see it, it looks like Charlie is now in the queue to come in.
oh, great, thank you.
Good evening, John Teriyaki, Teriyaki Architectural Design. I believe Greg Morse was planning to attend. I'm not sure if he's.
I did see him on the attendee list earlier, I think.
Yes, he's being promoted now.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
All right, so we have myself, Matt, and Charlie are here on this one. And Woody is recused. So, John, go ahead.
Sounds good. I'm not sure if Greg is promoted, but he had done the initial presentation. So if it's okay, I'm going to pass it on to Greg to do for a quick recap.
Okay, great.
Thank you. For the record, Gregory Morse, registered engineer, Morse Engineering, presenting tonight with John Teriyaki, representing the property owners, John and Yasmin Landy. This was a request for a special permit at their home at 95 Atlantic Ave. We presented it at the previous zoning board meeting, It's largely to raise the house. It's located in the floodplain in the Cohasset floodplain overlay district. We had submitted a revised plan as our previous submittal did not include the abutters houses on it. Other than that, there were no plan revisions made. The conservation had already approved this project and issued an order of conditions. The location of the house was being raised vertically, and a new set of unenclosed porches and decks were being added simply to accommodate new egress in and out of the building. I can put up a copy of the plan if you'd like. We did review it at the previous meeting. Again, the only change being that I added the abutters houses to it if the board wants to see it.
Have you had any comment from any of the abutters?
We haven't received any.
Anyone on the board want to see the plans again? Anyone on the board have a question or comment?
Greg, I think you clarified this for me last time. I was just looking at my notes. I know you mentioned, or I don't know, my notes say 63 pilings. Does that sound right? Or
I believe that is the correct number. Yes.
But the height of the structure obviously remains less than 35 feet, right? What was the total height?
Total height is less than 35. We did submit the architecturals with it, and let me just look at the application here. I think we were coming in at building height 33 foot 4 inches.
Okay. Any other board members have questions? Comments? All right. Julie, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak?
Not seeing any hands.
All right. Do we have a draft decision on this one?
Yes.
All right, then I'd move that we close the hearing on 95 Atlantic Ave.
Seconded.
All those in favor, Dave McMorris, aye. Charlie Higginson,
All right.
Matt Watkins,
Aye.
Lee Darst,
Aye.
Mike Dickey.
Aye.
All right. So the next item on the agenda is a dimensional variance for 350 Forest Ave. That one, we have a request for a withdrawal. I would move that we accept the request to withdraw the application without prejudice. And I would move that we do so.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded that we accept the request for withdrawal without prejudice. Charlie Higginson,
Yes.
Dave McMorris, aye. Matt Watkins,
Aye.
Lee Darst,
Aye.
Mike Dickey,
Aye.
Woody Chidick.
Aye.
All right, that one's done. So we have two hearings left. We have the dimensional variance for 135 King Street, which is the municipal building, and the use variance for 149 King Street. Since we are all here, why don't we go back to the 149 King Street use variance hearing? Julia, can you bring people forward on that?
Yes.
And one of the reasons I'd like to do this one next is because anyone who saw our agenda and thinks that the municipal building is going to come up later, it would probably be better if we do this one first so that it does come up later.
Chair McMorris, it's Adam Brodsky. May I proceed?
Yes, you may.
And again, thank you for your courtesy. I represent PSI Atlantic Acquisition 8 LLC. You know Jesse Morgan, the Senior Vice President with PSI, as well as Greg Morse, a registered professional engineer with Morse Engineering. At our last hearing on March 4th, the ZBA appeared to be reasonably satisfied, I'm choosing my words carefully, reasonably satisfied that PSI had proven the first two elements for the grant of a use variance. First, that the property contains unique conditions which do not affect the zoning district generally. And second, that these unique conditions restrict redevelopment except for self-storage and make it economically not feasible to redevelop for other permitted uses within the zoning district, therefore demonstrating substantial hardship. The board did ask that we provide more specific information regarding each permitted use within the zoning district, and Jesse prepared an additional analysis and is prepared to present that to you this evening. The board was still asking questions about the limit of its authority and whether the grant of a variance would substantially derogate from the bylaw's purpose and contravene town meeting's intent. We presented what we believe to be credible evidence that the self-storage project enhances rather than detracts from the public good, and that no substantial derogation will result. And I suggested in my letter to the board on March 24 that sort of a blanket refusal to grant a use variance because the project will result in any derogation from the bylaw would actually contrary to the intent of town meeting, which amended the bylaw in 2021 and 2023 to specifically allow use variances. And additionally, as I pointed out in my letter, that town meeting was expressly told in 2024 when it approved the consolidation of the zoning districts that PSI's project was permitted. And we suggest that there was no intent to prohibit PSI from constructing its self-storage project on this site. And therefore, in this case, the ZBA would not be substituting its judgment for that of town meeting. So if you'll bear with me, I just want to touch on the issue of substantial derogation. As I said in my letter, to satisfy that requirement, that the variance can be granted without substantial detriment, the ZBA must make a finding regarding the overall effect of the proposed use of the locus on other property within the same district. And I specifically cited to Kavanaugh versus De Flumera, 9 Mass Appeals Court case, in which the Zoning Board of Appeals granted a use variance for a general store within a residential district. And the question at trial and on appeal was whether the variance substantially derogated from the purpose of that zoning bylaw. The trial court found that improvements that were made by the applicant were much preferred over the derelict and rat-infested existing conditions, and the use would be a substantial benefit to the district as a whole. The appeals court concluded that this finding was adequate, to support a finding of no substantial detriment. And the appeals court stated that the deviation must be substantial, and unless the use significantly detracts from the zoning plan for the district, a variance must be upheld because there's always going to be some derogation from the bylaw's purpose. And in fact, the appeals court went on to say that denial on the basis of slight or insubstantial departure would approach confiscation by depriving property owners of virtually all practical uses. So the appeals court upheld the use variance and found that the variance would not result in substantial detriment. Like Kavanaugh in this case, PSI presented evidence that the project is better than current conditions and benefits the district as a whole. Like Kavanaugh, PSI demonstrated that it's not economically feasible to develop the property for other permitted uses. Like Kavanaugh, PSI suggests that denial of a variance in this instance would approach confiscation of the property because it would deprive the landowner of virtually all practical uses of the property. And you may recall in my letter, I cited to another use variance case, Boyajian versus the Board of Appeals of Wellesley, 6th Mass Appeals Court case, where the appeals court upheld use variance for a medical office building in a residential district. Again, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into the details of that. But like in the Boyajian case, PSI also demonstrated that the property will increase property values. And like Boyajian, PSI proved that the project has sufficient parking and there will be no significant increase in traffic. And like Boyajian, as well as Kavanaugh, PSI proved that it's highly unlikely that the property is usable for other uses allowed within the zoning district. I should note that in Boyajian, the court said that the project can be conditioned to ensure the purposes or that the purposes of the bylaw are served, and would remind the board that the planning board did condition site plan approval. And if the zoning board of appeals wish to condition the project, they can do so. So again, I don't want to continue to drone on, but I just want to speak about the ZBA's authority to grant a use variance. And as I mentioned earlier and in my letter, town meeting actually changed the bylaw to expressly allow use variances. For years, the bylaw prohibited use variances. However, at annual town meeting on May 24, 2021, town meeting adopted Article 25, allowing use variances. And then in 2023, I think on 2 occasions at annual town meeting and special town meeting, proceeded to conform other sections of the bylaw to allow use variances. So I'd suggest that there's been a conscious decision by town meeting on 3 occasions to authorize this board to grant a use variance, and the board has clear authority to do so. And as I suggested, a sort of blanket refusal not to do so, I'd suggest may undermine what town meeting intended to do in 2021 and 2023. Lastly, and I've made this point previously, but I provided more information. Town meeting, when it consolidated the zoning districts, did not intend to prohibit PSI from constructing its project. In my various letters previously, I provided excerpts, of quotations from town meeting, but we took the liberty of preparing a transcript of the presentation of Article 17 to town meeting on June 3, 2024. And the key takeaways were: 1, town meeting was told that for simplicity and ease of use, they were getting rid of, or asked to get rid of, the districts that were no longer used or never have been used and are no longer needed. Second, town meeting was told that the purpose of the bylaw was to eliminate the technology business as well as the light industry district. And town meeting was told, and I'm going to quote, goes back to simplicity. Nothing has been developed of any specialty for the light industry or technology business. Technology business has yielded us 1 storage facility that is already built and a new one that just got permitted a week ago, close quote. And you have the transcript of town meeting. Town meeting was expressly told that PSI's project was permitted and that there would be 2 self-storage facilities in the former technology business district, the extra space storage facility at 81 King Street and PSI's project at 149 King Street. We suggest that there's no intent to prohibit PSI from constructing its project. Town meeting may have intended to prohibit new self-storage in the new consolidated zoning district going forward, but it did not intend to prohibit PSI's project. I'd suggest that that's also reflecting the fact that, as far as I can recall, there's been no opposition to this application in the many hearings that we've had on this matter. And that is also evidence of town meeting's intent. So we suggest that the board will not be substituting its judgment for town meeting if it entertains our use variance. I may be pushing my luck a little bit here, but we're at the end of the road here, so you'll bear with me and hopefully not hold it against me. If the ZBA does not believe it can at any time derogate from the intent of the bylaw, it's a blanket, no derogation rule. We're not talking about substantial derogation, but you can't derogate from the bylaw. The ZBA cannot entertain any application for a variance, whether it's a use variance or whether it's a dimensional variance. It's the same legal test. And the board's got to apply its regulations in a uniform fashion. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but Jesse is prepared to present his material, and Greg is also available to answer any technical questions you may have. Thank you.
Assuming there's no questions, Chairman, members of the board, once again, thank you for the opportunity to allow us to come before you and further emphasize our case for a use variance. As you suspect, we still remain confident that we've satisfied each of the three prongs. You know, as our submission details, I'm going to focus more on the economic arguments, but to us, they're clear. You know, there's a sizable site work premium associated with developing this property that unfortunately would render other permitted uses economically unviable because they cannot be developed at scale due to the septic and traffic limitations at the site, you know, all of which we've detailed on previous hearings. At a high level, I'll try not to bore everyone with the real estate finance aspect of this, but commercial real estate is valued based on the percentage return an investor would receive on the capital placed into the project. Essentially, for every dollar that goes in, I want a certain amount of dollars back. In Boston, according to CoStar, who's really one of the industry sources and standards for commercial real estate information, retail properties in Boston today are valued at a 6.5% return, meaning for every $10 someone puts in, they'd like 65 cents back. Residential properties are valued at a 5.1% return, and office properties are valued at a 7.9% return. So the higher the return, the lower amount of money you get for the dollar that you're earning on the property. So what does that mean? That would mean from a development perspective, a return on cost for that development that is below those values or even at those values would not be considered financially viable, would not be able to raise capital, would not be able to get financing, because the return you would ultimately achieve would be less than what a buyer would require. Put more simply, in a case where your percentage return on your development would be less than how the property is valued, what you built it for would be worth less than what it's worth, what someone would pay for it as stabilized. So going back to what we've detailed previously and what our experts have spoken to and shared details and exhibits on, is we would see smaller size developments at a site like this realize anywhere from a $200 to $300 per square foot site work premium on top of typical construction costs. And, you know, when we say site work premium, we're not including utilities, paving, landscaping, stormwater, the septic system. We're just talking about the cost to deal with the soil and topographical conditions to ultimately lead to a pad-ready site. So when you factor that premium into the typical cost for small-scale retail, office, you know, the small-scale residential uses, you know, in our best case scenario for what the uses could be developed here, you're talking a 4.7% return on cost for retail, which is below the 6.5% value. We're seeing a 4.1% return on cost for residential, which is below the 5.1%. And we're seeing, you know, even smaller 3.8% for office, which is 7.9%. You're not even getting halfway there. So those returns are far below what the stabilized value would be. Now, without that site work premium, we're certainly not arguing that other, you know, commercial developments cannot happen in Cohasset if they could be developed at scale, or if they were at a site that was relatively flat or had better soil conditions. But that site work premium essentially puts you in a position where uses that would otherwise be viable just aren't, because of the uniqueness and the characteristics of this site. You know, beyond just the mathematical analysis in our submission, you know, we also detailed the property's history along with recent commercial property sales in Cohasset. And the results, you know, they confirm the mathematical analysis, which is this property has not had a viable commercial use on it in nearly a quarter century. The use it used to have, you know, roughly 25 years ago, it fell into disrepair and was never replaced. You know, the current owner of the property has tried to sell to other users that would otherwise be permitted and had no luck. And then the sales per square foot are below the estimated cost to develop this site. We're seeing properties trade in Cohasset below the cost to go ultimately to build. And we detailed this on our previous hearing with the anecdote of the 2-bay auto garage, but there's certainly more than that. So that's really the economic case. But before I finish, I just want to reiterate and emphasize Adam's previous statements. To us, the case law and the context empower the board with the authority to grant a use variance for our application should they deem that we've met the 3 prongs. And we do not see how the approval conflicts with town meeting. That's really why we provided the full transcripts to the board. We're not asking y'all to infer anything or think through what someone may or may not have said or thought when they were pushing this forward, but just the literal words that were said at town meeting before, the vote occurred. So to that point, and to reiterate what Adam said, the project was specifically referenced as a permitted project, and that the town would have 2 self-storage facilities within the former technology business district. That's not 1, that's not 3. We're not looking to zone in self-storage for every commercial district in Cohasset. It's this specific use, this specific property, and this specific use. And there's no other project that's mentioned. And obviously the decision isn't mine, but these statements and reading through the transcripts were certainly compelling for me. So, it's been a long road to get here. Obviously y'all have been incredibly patient with us, multiple late nights. So just want to say we appreciate the continued consideration. And as Adam mentioned, we're prepared and ready to answer any questions y'all may have. Thank you.
Chair McMorris, I should add that in addition to the materials we submitted on March 24, there was a letter from Brian Davis, the property owner, dated March 16, 2025. And that there may be additional materials that were submitted. I think you referenced that earlier. I haven't seen that, but.
I believe that Julie has everything gathered into the record at this point. All right, anyone else from your group want to say anything?
No, again, thank you very much. We're all here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, anyone from the board have anything they want to add?
I'd like to add something, and a couple of different points. This is Woody Chittick speaking. First of all, I was the one back in 21 that went through the planning board and process and proposed that the bylaw be amended to really have two types of decisions, use decisions, of use that wasn't specifically addressed in the bylaw was subject to a special permit, and a use that was expressly prohibited would be subject to a variance hearing. That passed through town meeting. Unfortunately, somewhere in the town hall, they made one change, and I think in section 4.2 or 3 failed to make another 4.2. They failed to change the language that the town meeting voted on, and so it was memorialized in the 2021 to 23 bylaws. Really, both these were in opposition one to another. But my intention was always that a variance could be used rather than the wording that remained in the bylaw, despite the town meeting vote, which at that point read, a variance may not authorize a use not otherwise permitted in the district in which the land or structure is located. That's just really a sort of correction point. And during the 2022-23 period, when the zoning bylaw committee met, I remember speaking to the consultant, Judge Judith Cutler, about protecting the use variance provision, such as it was. And she advised me that recent case law had determined that this was sort of an invalid provision. I've since looked at I'm not a lawyer, but I've since looked at a few things. And I think she probably was not correct in that. Certainly chapter 40A, section 10 does allow for use variances if expressly permitted. Okay, but with that having been said, then I went back to the bylaw that was in effect until 2024. And interestingly enough, my reading says that a self-storage unit is nowhere addressed. Now, I may be wrong, and Adam, this may not, you're probably not going to want to support me. Well, you'll want to support me in this, but I don't know if I can be supported. But up until that 2024 town meeting, what was permitted in this, or what was not permitted in this district, was an open air storage yard, warehouse, or distribution plant, which basically functions as an accessory use to a permitted primary use. In other words, they cite construction supplies, firewood, building material, textiles, food products, household supplies, and products of manufacturing, none of which, in my estimation, apply to a self-storage unit. This was quite clearly intended to be an accessory use. And so I would, my dilemma is that I think, and not a dilemma, but my puzzlement really concerns the fact that this was not a use permitted, that this is not a use addressed in the bylaw at that point in time, and consequently probably wasn't required to meet the test of a variance, but more likely was required to meet the test of a special permit, as we might find in section 12.5. So I mean, I think the whole, and there was no mention of a self-storage unit in the highway business district, and so for the bylaw committee and its chair to suggest or argue that that really the technology business and light industry districts were being merged into this district, I think is an invalid statement. Self-storage was never covered in this bylaw. And consequently, I think a special permit is the right kind of relief. But certainly, but whether or not, it was certainly the intention. Now, I'm a little puzzled. I'm confused, Dave, I guess. I don't have the chronology. These people applied for a self-storage unit, and at the same town meeting that voted on prohibiting a self-storage unit, but that was a new construction, new language. That language never appeared in the prior bylaw. There was no mention whatsoever of where are we? Section 6. No mention of an enclosed wholesale or storage business in the bylaw. It was silent on that. And so to have this new submission saying that we're really gonna, merge everything together, this is a new construction. And I kind of question really whether town meeting was inadvertently misled. It was certainly new language. But my other problem is that I hate to see the variance process manipulated or extended or relaxed to the point where it's really it's really tough to justify the three-pronged test of a variance in many cases. I would much prefer to see us go back to the article or the phrase that was deleted, saying that you can have a variance process for expressly prohibited uses, but a special permit is for uses that aren't covered. And I would suggest that maybe at that moment in time, self-storage units were not covered in our bylaw at all. I don't know. I mean, there is a chronology here. But I certainly think that the town was misled into thinking that a pre-existing prohibition on self-storage units was simply being expanded. I may be wrong, but I could not find it in the bylaw when I looked at the old bylaw, when I looked today, not a single mention of of an enclosed self-storage unit, simply open air storage, ancillary or accessory to an existing use.
Chair McMorris, would you like me to respond?
I would, yes.
Yeah, now have I confused you sufficiently?
No, I understand your points. I'm not going to speak, obviously, to your personal knowledge regarding the adoption of the use variance. I did lay out specifically in my letter the chronology, the changes in the language, the omissions, and the revisions in 2023. But I'm looking at our application to the planning board for site plan approval. And I wrote, pursuant to the amendments to Article 4 of the Cohasset zoning code, including section 304.2D, table of principal use regulations, approved at special town meeting on November 13, 2023, enclosed wholesale business or storage is a permitted use within the technology business district. Enclosed wholesale business or storage is defined as, I'm quoting, wholesale sales or commercial storage facility where all sales operations and storage are confined within a building. It's section 300, or was section 300, 4.2C6.
Wait a minute, let me just keep talking. I've got 300,
4.2,
forget the 300 part, but 4.2.
2C6. PSI proposes a commercial storage facility use at the property, which is a conforming use. This is probably the most important part. John Hallen, the Director of Planning, Permits, and Inspection, confirmed this prior to PSI submitting its application for site plan review. So it was our position that it was expressly stated as a permitted use as a commercial storage facility under those revisions to Article 4, which was confirmed by Mr. Hallen prior to beginning this application process.
That mean we agree or not agree?
I disagree with you. We believe it was a permitted use at the time we submitted for site plan approval. That was confirmed by Mr. Hallen. And so that's why we proceeded on that basis.
Okay, and Adam, give me that very quickly again. 4.2 what?
Yes, sir. If actually, you'll have a copy of this if you have our original.
Yeah, but I don't know how to find, I mean, I've got the old bylaws that I was given and the new ones.
Yes, sir. So it's section 304.2D, table of principal uses, was approved at special town meeting on November 13, 2023. It's enclosed wholesale business or storage in the table of uses, and then it's defined as wholesale sales or commercial storage facility.
Okay.
And it's 4.2C6.
I don't have that in the copy that was given to me from Town Hall, but be that as it may, you're saying it was a permitted use.
Yes, sir.
So a permitted use, well, at best is subject to a special permit expansion, but not a variance.
Well, no, if it's a permitted use, we don't need any zoning.
We may not.
We need a
Right,
site
zoning.
plan approval and a building permit, and that's the problem.
To be sure, I think one thing we can agree on is that a enclosed wholesale or storage business was never in a prior version of this bylaw.
No, sir, it was adopted in 2023.
Oh, as a permitted use, but it was
Yes, sir.
never in the bylaw as a prohibited use.
I can't speak to that. All I can tell you is as of 2023, when we were reviewing this project, it was a permitted use.
Well, at the least, the town meeting was misled. in 2024.
And again, we don't wish to make any suggestions along those lines. I'm hopeful that we can agree that town meeting, when it passed the consolidation article, did not intend to prohibit our self-storage project on our property, which is why we believe this board, and again, these are incredibly unusual circumstances, and I think the board is appropriately being strict and stringent with respect to its review and should not grant variances willy-nilly. I think we've made an excellent case. We've proven each of those elements and we've set aside our burden. I mean, the alternative, which has been suggested, is we go back to town meeting and change the bylaw to allow self-storage. That would open up self-storage in the entirely new consolidated district, which again, we don't want to create any more unintended consequences. This is an elegant, narrowly tailored solution to this particular problem. And as I've indicated, I'm not aware of anyone speaking at any of these hearings in opposition, which again confirms town meeting's intent. I believe that one of the additional documents that was submitted is actually a petition in support of this application signed by 111 residents of Cohasset. I haven't seen it, but I've received a text. I can't speak to it. Again, you've got clear indications that town meeting did not intend to prohibit this use on this particular property. And I should note, and so therefore there's no substantial derogation of the intent of the bylaw, which is our legal standard to prove.
All right. Anyone else on the board have any comments, questions, input, discussion? All right. I think that your point that town meeting didn't intend to prohibit this project is true. But I think it's also true that town meeting didn't intend to permit this project or allow this project, because they were told they didn't really have any input or there's nothing the town meeting was going to be able to do at that vote to change what they were being told has already happened. And, I think it is a stretch to assume that given the choice, that town meeting would have said, okay, let's build that one and then not build anymore. It's just as likely that people are saying, oh, gee, I wish we could have knocked that one off too, because we don't want those things here. I don't know. I mean, I'm not able to get into the head of people at town meeting. Don't want to. That's not our role. But our role is to follow what town meeting has expressed. And they've expressed they don't want these facilities in the zoning district. And I know that, the alternative is to go back to town meeting, get the use permitted, build the project. And it's a lot of extra steps, assuming that there's widespread support for it. But I would feel an awful lot more comfortable hearing from town meeting that it is what the town wants, because frankly, it's a large facility in a prominent place that's going to be there forever. And it's going to change things. Sometimes change really good, sometimes it's not. And in our system, it's up to town meeting to decide what town meeting wants and what they don't want for the town. And the current status of what town meeting has expressed is that we don't want self-storage facilities. And I understand all of the circumstances surrounding all of this and how it's the timing of it, the way everything laid out, the fact that both the zoning change and the site plan were in front of the planning board at the same time, but never seemed to find each other is very strange. But it is what it is. And as much as I sympathize with all of the things that you brought forth, and as much as I agree with the fact that the first two elements of the variance are well met, I'm still not there on the derogation of the bylaw issue. And I think derogation is a variance is not a derogation of the bylaw. A variance is a deviation from the bylaw. And I think there's a difference between deviation and derogation. Derogation means that if you allow a variance, that it's not going to essentially undermine or counteract what the express provisions of the bylaw are. And I think that that's what this is a derogation. I think it's a substantial derogation. And that's where I am on this right now. It's really not where I want to be, but it's where I am. And I know that you had expressed some a wish that to get the sense of the board so that you could make other decisions if you needed to. So I thought that now was probably the time to let you know where I stand.
No, thank you, Chair McMorris. I can't read that far into town meetings actions. All I can do is rely upon the transcript.
And I
would just remind you that, yes, this project is going to result in a change in the district, which is why we went through a site plan approval process. All of these things were evaluated by the planning board and found that we met all of our design criteria. And unless I'm mistaken, and Jesse will correct me, I don't think there was any opposition at all at the site plan approval process.
It was a permitted use at the time.
Regardless, we provided public notice. The planning board could have, and by the way, I mean, the project changed through that planning board process and resulted actually in a better project. But the public notice, publication in the newspaper, I mean, it's the commercial district, and I'll assume that since there was no opposition, that no one had a concern regarding the change that you're speaking about within the zoning district. Again, we're not the landowners here. There's a business deal here. We can't remedy this at annual town meeting. I don't know whether the town would take up zoning in fall town meeting. We don't want to talk about town meeting. That's in the future. I don't know whether this business deal survives it or not. You know, this has already taken far longer than the business people ever anticipated. But to your point, I think you're wrong on the substantial derogation issue, and the cases suggest that. And
I've read the cases that you offered.
yes. Again, I don't want to overstate a case. We're looking for a variance, which is we're not entitled to a variance. It's an unusual remedy reserved for very unique circumstances. But in those instances where use variances were upheld, I think we hit all four corners. And as I said, I don't want to go too far. But if your rule is going to be essentially you can't derogate from the intent of town meeting, then you can't grant any variances, whether they're use variances or dimensional variances, because it's the same test. So if town meeting said the side yard setback should be X, then you can't derogate from that intent by your reasoning. That would be a substantial derogation of town meeting.
There's a difference here.
There isn't on that legal prong. I will say there's a difference with respect to dimensional variances with respect to the hardship test, and which is that the test for substantial hardship under the case law for a dimensional variance is less than the case for substantial hardship for a use variance. I think we've already satisfied our case for substantial hardship for a use variance, but the test of substantial derogation is, I think, the same. And again, I don't think that a bright line like that is going to be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
And I would like to just further emphasize Adam's points. Obviously, Adam is the legal expert, but there were some comments regarding the building and its placement within the corridor. As Adam mentioned, we did go through multiple public hearing processes, 3 times with the planning board, 2 times with the Conservation Commission. We did, listen carefully and intently and address our project as it pertained to the comments and concerns they had. There were specific concerns regarding the harmonious use with the residential to the rear of us. A lot of it to do with noise, light spillage, traffic. We adjusted our project to meet all of those requests.
And I know you've adjusted it to meet a lot of ours as well, which I do.
Correct. Correct. Then, the use is, in a lot of ways, I think it's independent of the dimensions. We're not asking for any dimensional variances. In fact, we had to bring our height in, which comes at a cost and comes at a lost square footage. But we're still able to move forward because this is a project we believe is viable. If it's coming to the use of self-storage, it's an innocuous use. We don't drive traffic. We don't drive noise. We brought in all the design characteristics to fit within the community. There is a self-storage facility along the corridor. I don't think you can say that this corridor isn't well suited for more self-storage. There's a public benefit as it pertains to the tax revenue, which members of the public have spoken in favor of. We have 111 signatures for a use variance in Cohasset, Massachusetts, I appreciate ultimately wanting to have these conversations at town meeting. I think the transcripts show that the conversation as it pertained to our specific use did happen at town meeting. It happened at the zoning bylaw forum. It was brought up that there would be 2 self-storage facilities. Going back to town meeting, timing and cost concerns aside, we can't spot zone properties, as y'all very well know. We're not looking to zone self-storage into every property in the district. I love self-storage as a use. That's not what we're asking. We're asking for y'all to consider us on the 3 prongs, which, we've diligently argued and provided detail for, and hopefully have met the thresholds, but it's a difficult threshold. And I think this is a case where it's valid, or else we wouldn't have spent the time and the effort and used up your time to come here. So I understand. I think there's a lot that we'd like you to continue to consider, and please think, do us the courtesy of really considering as this pertains to the use of this specific property and not necessarily the whole of Cohasset. And rezoning the entire bylaw again for the second time in a year.
All right, thank you. Anyone else on the board?
I would just say, I guess, trying to understand your thought process, David, and I guess I'm just missing it. These folks played by the rules. They went through all of the programs to get permitted. The town was told, look, they've already been permitted. And to me, the town voted on the change with having been informed that there would be a second self-storage unit in the new combined district. And that seems kind of pretty obvious on the record. And to say somehow that the town, the town didn't know what it was doing, I think is perhaps you know, insulting to the folks who attended and voted at town meeting. They were told and they voted accordingly. So I'm a little confused on that point, David, and you know, all due respect, you know, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. But I also think it's patently unfair to the applicants that they have played by the rules. They've done everything they were told, and in fact, and then, you know, there's this kind of high wire act where it's somehow, you know, even though the town was told and voted with the assumption there'd be a second self-storage unit in the district, that in fact the town was voting against it, and in fact was hoping to have some kind of rather than voting to have this grandfathered in, it was actually voting retroactively to ban something that had already been permitted. That just, and again, apologies, but I just don't understand the thought process.
That's not exactly what I was trying to say, but I understand what you're saying. Anyone else on the board?
I'd just like to say that my thinking is exactly in line with Mike Dickey's.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right. Anyone from the audience?
Paul Davis. He's being promoted now.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, yeah, Paul Davis. I submitted the 111 signatures that basically they signed saying I support the granting of a use variance for 149 King Street to allow a self-storage facility to be built. Pretty much everyone I talked to, the thought was self-storage isn't glamorous or it isn't sexy. But it generates an awful lot of taxes for the town, and it doesn't use their infrastructure. It's not using the schools. It's not, you know, going to the dump. It's not increasing traffic. So the thought was, you know, especially what the schools are going through right now with their $1 million deficit, that if a few of these projects were approved, it would, you know, obviously benefit the tax base of the town. And I'm sure everyone's concerned about taxes, you know, and I don't have kids in school, but I would be upset living in Cohasset at this point if I had to pay for kindergarten and all the fees that are being increased. I don't know all the exact details. I just heard what some of these people that were signing the petition. So I just wanted to say that I know I submitted it late, but I thought it would be better to have one voice than 111 people calling in. I know the meeting's going long enough as it is. I just feel I agree with some of the other board members that the town was told that they were getting a second storage facility. Whether it was an unintended consequence or how it came about, that's what they thought they were getting. The whole town thought they were getting a self-storage before the bylaw was changed. And the applicant basically, in my opinion, got the rug pulled out from underneath them. They followed all the rules. They got to the point, and then they said, no, you can't get a building permit because the zoning changed. And so it wasn't allowed use the entire time they were trying to get it permitted. And it's a timing issue, you know, as far as what Mr. Chittick was saying, you know, 3 months earlier, it was allowed. It's never been specifically banned. So I think it's a jump to say that the town meeting intended to not have another one, you know, to not to ban self-storage in that district. When it was allowed, it was never not allowed, and there's one right down the street. So I'm just trying to reemphasize what some of the other board members are saying, that it seems like the fair thing and the logical thing. I don't know all the legal prongs and the specifics, but as far as benefiting the town, it does. So I just wanted to voice that I'm obviously strongly in favor of it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right. So we have draft decisions on this one as well, correct?
Yes.
All right. Do I have a motion?
Adam, you're on mute.
Was it?
Thank you very much, Jesse. I apologize. Chair McMorris. I mean, unless your position has changed over the last several minutes, we're going to request a continuance because we don't own this property. And as I've explained, we can't do anything that would prejudice the landowner's rights here. So we're not asking that you close the hearing, again, unless circumstances have changed.
All right. Well, if you have no objection to continuing it to next month, then let's do that. I want to think about it a little more.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have a motion to continue this until our May meeting?
So moved.
Second? I'll second. Oh, and Adam, do we need a letter, an extension letter?
Happy to provide an extension to the board.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of continuing to our May meeting? Charlie Higginson?
No.
Matt Watkins?
Aye.
Dave McMorris, aye. Mike Dickey?
Aye.
Woody Chidick?
Aye.
Lee Darst?
Aye.
All right, we're continued to May.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Last hearing on tonight's agenda is also on King Street at 135 King Street. This is an application for a dimensional variance submitted by the town of Cohasset for a new public safety municipal services building on King Street. And I see Michelle Leary, Chief Quigley. Who else is coming forward on this one, Julia?
William Murray is the project representative.
Okay,
Good evening.
good evening.
Oh, good, you can hear me.
And now we can see you too.
Always an issue. Good evening, my name is William Murray. I'm from Places Associates. We're the site specialist consultant. We work for the project architect, which is HKT Architects. Do I see Paula in the audience somewhere? So presenting with me tonight will be Paula Claridge and Amy Dunlap from HKT Architects, and I think that there are members of the building committee probably in attendance to answer questions. So with the permission of the board, I'll just very quickly, I have a small PowerPoint presentation. Can I share that?
Yes, please do.
I'm looking for the share icon. There it is. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Beautiful. Okay, so very quickly, This is the site actually adjacent to the site that you just talked about. It's on the same side of the street, 135 King Street. It is located to the west of that site. And let's see if we can. Going too fast. This is just a very quick rendering of the project of what is proposed. You will see in the center of the site is the existing building that'll be renovated. On the left side will be a fire station substation addition. On the right side will be additions for Sallyport, Fleet Garage, and behind on the back side of that facility, prisoner processing and other areas. This is a isometric view of the proposed addition. So the existing building is shown here in gray. This is the fire station addition. On the right side of the depiction is the police station addition. Then we have architecturals outlined in red, which show the new additions, but I think that the renderings probably do it a little bit more justice. Floor plans, and the floor plan shows where we're asking for a variance, where we're proposing to build the building on the easterly side, inside the 20-foot sideline offset for a portion of the fire station portion of the building. Again, more floor plans, and we can come back to these if there's any need for that kind of discussion. Here's a site plan. Currently, this parking lot in the front pretty much exists. This is the fire station addition over here. We're proposing a new parking lot, secure parking lot to the rear. We've got a little bit of a blow up here where we show 11.99 feet offset from the proposed fire station addition. We are complying with the sideline offset on the westerly side of the site where it's 22.9 feet. Just a quick grading plan to show that we're digging into the hill. The site is steeply sloping. It's made up principally of a clay type, rocky clay type material. And groundwater is relatively shallow. The building inspector was out, as was the police chief, when we were digging holes, so that they personally have seen the types of soils that we're talking about. Utilities will be brought in on the easterly side and on the westerly side, so they're coming pretty much in to the back of the building. And again, here's a better depiction of the building that we're talking about. So what we're asking for is a reduction in the offset to the side lot line. What we've designed is 11.99 feet to the property line, but we're asking for a variance to allow the offset to be as little as 11.5 feet, because we don't want to come back due to construction tolerances and come back if we're something less than the 11.99. We'd like the variance to give us 11.5 feet so that we can make sure that whatever is ultimately built meets the requirements of the zoning board. So the use itself is permitted. It's a governmental use in the underlying zoning district. It's a use that's allowed throughout the town, but it is subject to site plan review. We will, if we grant this variance, we will be coming back to you for a special permit and perhaps some other requirements, because we are in the water resource district. We will be going to the planning board for site plan review, be going to the Conservation Commission for stormwater, and we'll be going to the Board of Health for septic system. And we've met with those agencies already. But the point of submitting this variance to you is if we are not successful in getting the variance to the sideline offset, then a major redesign of the entire facility will happen, and we don't want to go to those boards unnecessarily and exercise them if your board decides that this is not a valid request. So very quickly, and I know it's getting late, so I'll try and keep this brief. I'm an expert at public safety design. I've been working on public safety facilities for over 30 years. I've been working with more than a dozen architects, and I've done more than 50 public safety facilities. I have a $60 million project going on in Taunton. We've been retained by the city of Somerville to renovate, rebuild, or replace all of their fire stations. We're working in Plimpton on a fire station. So I've been doing this for quite some time, and the reason that I'm pointing that out is I am speaking as an expert in site design, and I'll have the architect, if you need, to go into the details of how and why this building was designed. You can see that there are garages over on the right, which is the police station portion of the building. When we originally started the design of this project, and this building is the brick building currently exists, so its placement on the site really restricts our ability to build anywhere else. And the use of the building, which is a very unique use, a fire and police station, also adds to both the burden of the design and works to some of our hardship. We looked at putting the fire station over to the right, but the problem with a fire station is they need to respond, and fire departments respond using their apparatus. So EMS and fire, an ambulance crew needs the ambulance, a fire crew needs a fire truck. The police respond, so police typically respond from the road. So 85 to 90% of police responses are dispatched to a cruiser on the road. They don't respond from the police station. And if the fire portion of the building were located on the westerly side, or the right side as you look at it, they would have to pull out of the garage, traverse an entire parking lot, and then go down the driveway. And that's an unacceptable number of maneuvers for something that requires seconds for response is an important criteria. Whereas the police department drive mostly cruisers, they're highly maneuverable, and they don't enter into the police portion of the building at a high rate of speed. Usually that's not, they're coming back from a response. Whereas the fire department has to have a straight and direct egress out of the site. And when we started the design of these buildings, we looked at the fire department, whether we could put them on the second level, and that did not work because the slope of the site and the steepness of the driveway. We looked at putting it on other portions of the site, and it just didn't work. So we've really exhausted the requirements of the building. So when an architect designs the building, first they do a program. They meet with the fire department, they meet with the police department, and they design the building, and then they refine the spaces down in both size and cost and use categories. And that has happened on this project. So what we are saying is we have refined this building as much as we reasonably can. Because it is such a unique use, it's not a retail use, it's not a commercial use. It is a very distinct and defined use that has an extremely defined set of criteria for its development. So we are saying that this site in particular meets all the, as I heard previously spoken to, the prongs. The soil conditions are extremely difficult. We're keeping the footprint of the impact as tight as we can to the building. The lot shape, while it's a rectangular lot, the placement of the existing building on that lot is causing us hardship. We have to build out to the sides. We really can't go to the back. We certainly can't go to the front. The topography is also driving very much the development of the land. We're going to be doing a lot of retaining walls and stone slope stabilization. And we do feel that this is a unique application. You certainly probably will never see another police and fire station in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals for this kind of use. The property was surveyed by McKenzie Engineering so that the plans have been prepared by an interdisciplinary team of surveyors, engineers, and architects. So that's the short story. Paula Claridge, who is the project architect, can speak to any of the design criteria, as of course can the chiefs and members of the committee are on. So we're happy to entertain any questions and to give you any detailed answers that you might need.
I have one quick question. Has anyone approached the abutter to see if they have 10 feet that they want to give up?
I don't know that I can speak to that, but the problem is we have a timeline on this project to appear in front of town meeting. And that would require, any transfer of property would require going to town meeting. I can tell you that the town does have an easement. I think it's a 15-foot wide access easement on their property. On this side where the fire station is proposed, but that's an easement for access. That's not a transfer of property rights.
Oh, Dave, this is John Hallen. How are you?
Hey, John.
We did speak with the applicant next door at one point, and they did agree to, if asked, look into the possibility, but that's as far as it went. I think they were waiting for their resolution because they didn't have ownership of the property yet. So
that's true.
Yeah,
That's
so
true.
it was talked about and possibly agreed upon, but again, they didn't have ownership of the property yet because we were waiting for their situation to get resolved.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Yes, back to anybody else on the board have a question now, or should we move on to the more presentation?
Just a quick one. So the 8 feet or so that's on that left-hand side, that's I guess what's within that area that's being used for the fire department. Is that like a sleeping quarters, or is it I guess
This is Paula Claridge. I'm the architect with HKT. The space that's located there on these plans, the drawings have since been through a bit of a redesign. Oh no, they're showing correctly. It's a report writing and triage area for the fire department staff that will be there. So a lot of times people with some sort of an emergency, rather than going to the hospital, can come up to the fire station. So in that room, the fire department staff can be writing reports and also respond to members of the community that come up that require medical attention, and can treat them in the triage room there.
And it looks like I know William explained it looks like you took a look at, like, could you have gone higher? You know, because I know you're not quite at 35 feet. Could you have gone higher and not have to extend out that 8 feet? But that kind of logic didn't end up panning out from whatever.
Yeah, we did look at putting the dorms on the upper level and then pushing everything further back. But then we started getting into just costs related to code. We'd have to start rating a lot more walls. We'd have to change the interior design. And the unique thing about an apparatus bay is you can't put anything over the top of it because the vehicles are so high, and you need a lot of overhead clearance. It needs to have at least 22 feet of clearance. So it's difficult to put spaces up above the apparatus bay as well. So we have to kind of build everything around the apparatus bay. And so it kind of necessitates having their living quarters and storage places and the day room and all of that kind of wrap around the apparatus bay. And going 2 stories made it a little difficult because we also have mechanical spaces above the rear of this portion, as you can see there. And so that also kind of limited the amount of room we had to put spaces
All right, let's just
above.
Thank you.
and that's the first floor.
I think, Matt, also in the discussion, I think the triage center, they wanted as close to the public access as possible, so they weren't going necessarily through the building to get to. That came up in our discussion with the layout of the building. Also, that's again why some of the location was there.
Charlie Higginson, I have a question that doesn't relate to this variance on the east side of the building, but the driveway on the right side of the building. I believe the driveway needs a setback of 5 feet, and I don't see it on the site plan.
Yeah, we don't dimension that, but I would hazard a guess that we are 5 feet off the property line. The property line being the thick line. That's a retaining wall holding up the driveway, and the retaining wall is 2.5 feet thick, so we will be 5 feet off of that property line,
The driveway
the driveway. The retaining wall will not.
is 2.5 feet and you need 5 feet. I don't quite
Yeah,
understand.
there is space between us and the property line, so that if that is a requirement, then we will comply with that. We can.
I think, Charlie, too, at one point we did discuss that briefly, but they had the distance of 5 feet. There, it was close on the final drawing, but I think they were kind of aware of that initially, and certainly in a review we'll pick that up. But that's a good point on that pinch point. But I think from the asphalt to the edge of the property was closer to 6 feet. So we were very close, but looked like that distance they did have.
Yeah, we can ensure that that happens, and we will be back in front of you for a special permit if the variance is granted for the sideline offset. So there are other if in refining the design even further, if there are other changes, we will be able to come back. But I don't anticipate asking for a variance for that if I can make that work.
And I've made this point before, but the site plan doesn't show any adjacent buildings.
I didn't give that to you on the slideshow, but the cover sheet does show the adjacent buildings on the locus map, which does show their map parcel number.
It does call itself a cover sheet, not a site plan.
Correct, but the information is depicted. It shows the names of the abutters, the direct butters across the street, and the location of all of the. It's an aerial photograph, so it identifies the location and proximity and shows the property lines. And the reason we did that is then the site plan scale would be really small to show the abutting properties. So the locus map is drawn to scale at 1 inch equals 100 feet, and it depicts the senior housing, the housing to the rear, the commercial buildings off to the side, and the undeveloped nature of the site at 149. I mean, if technically that's an issue, I can just convert that cover sheet locus map to another plan sheet. So the area that we're talking is the house portion right here in the front of the building. And this is the police portion. So again, the requirements of MGL 48, Section 10. This is a unique use. And we do believe that desirable relief may be granted without any detriment to the public good and without nullifying or substantially degrading from the intent of the bylaw. You know, the development of this project is going to serve the public good and increase the amenity and security of the town. And we don't believe that any other applicant can say that they have a public safety facility. It is unique. And it has unique design requirements that other facilities just don't have.
Yeah, and I guess to drill down and typically, right, we take a hard look at the 3 criteria, and you know, you have some language in your application to address that, but I guess with the site conditions and topography, it sounds like you did do some exploratory bores. I don't know if you want to speak to each criteria, or, you know, kind of
happy to.
what
So
you saw on those bores that is maybe really unique.
So the soils on this site are a dense glacial till with a high clay content, and the depth of groundwater is pretty darn shallow. Working this kind of a soil, cutting into this kind of soil is a hard proposition, and it's going to be hard for any contractor to build on it, because the second it gets wet, it turns to jello, which isn't to say that you can't build on it. It's a very hard build, because once we get it built and it's stabilized and built, it'll hold itself in place like it does now. So we have shallow depths to groundwater. We have a very difficult soil, which means we have to have a very compact design footprint, because, you know, cutting into that steep slope is going to be very difficult. We're going to be dewatering high and low. We're going to be dewatering the backside of the building. Just the septic system itself needed dewatering to build it. So the soils are challenging, and we are doing everything that we can to meet the program. So the program is what the architect has developed, and it's a combination of the wants and the needs of the police station and the fire station, coupled with the building code, energy code, and the efficiency of use in spaces, which is what the architect has done. So then as site designers, we then take what the architect has done and we mimic the spaces on the outside. So the police chief needs more parking, and parking to the rear of the building is a highly desirable thing, because you do not want an off-duty officer interacting not in uniform with the general public. He needs to have a safe place to park his vehicle and to securely enter the police station. So that's why the parking in the back is needed. So every portion of this site design mimics the inside of the building. The access to the police department, the access into the driveways and the sally port. A sally port is a secure prisoner transfer. All of these exterior things mimic what goes on inside the building. And as I said, the driveway for the fire station has to be in this location, because we're mating up to an existing building, the location of which is driving us into this particular building and site design. The ambulance and the fire truck that are going to be here need to pull straight out and respond, more so than any other use that you're used to, because they are in emergency services. So the soils are dictating a very difficult build, and they're also dictating, along with the topography, a very tight development footprint. The use of retaining walls, the use of structural stone to hold up the slopes, the lot shape in relationship to the existing building. We don't have a whole lot of options. the finances of the town are that we're trying to keep this as a reasonable construction project. And going uphill is not really a valid or usable methodology for the architect, and that's been explored extensively by the building committee. They've asked us to look at many different schemes for the development of this project, and we're more than happy to give those to the zoning board of appeals. I just didn't want to give you too much information. So the placement of the building and the lot shape and the configuration of the lot lines, along with the uniqueness of the use, triggers all of our soil conditions, lot shape, topography, and structures. The uniqueness of the use is not generally affecting the zoning district as a whole, but is unique to this site. So we think we trigger every single one of the 40A Section 10 criteria for the granting of a variance. And as I said, the Board of Health has seen and knows of the conditions of the soil. Chief Quigley has seen them. Mr. Hallen has seen the soils. And there will be more excavation on this site in the future. We've done soil borings to verify that these soils exist going down to 50 feet, and soil borings to show that these very difficult, hard to work soils go down 30 feet. There's no other soils on this site. That this is what we have to work with, and the town has already purchased this property.
All right, anyone else on the board have questions so far? All right, is there anyone else in the applicant that wants to present anything?
I think we're good. Paula?
All right.
Yep, I think we've covered everything.
All right, well, let's check in with people in the audience or other interested parties who are with us. Anyone like to speak? If you're in the audience, there's a little button you can hit that raises your hand. No? Okay. Well, I think this was a good start. And I think that questions that we had for first having seen the plans, I think we're pretty well covered a lot of what we needed to know. So can you just give us an idea of what your timeline looks like as far as what you need from us, when you need it, et cetera?
Paula, you want to grab that, or Melissa?
I don't have the schedule of our next deliverables, but we're hoping to go before I believe the next submittal we need to do is for the planning board for the site plan review. And I think their next submittal date that we were trying to hit was toward the end of this month or the middle of this month to try to hit their next meeting next month. So they're all kind of dominoes a little bit at this point. So we're hoping to try to speed up our reviews and kind of get them in place as soon as possible. The hope is that we will be able to go out to bid in July so we can get a bid in hand for the town meeting that's anticipated to be in September or October. So we need to get all of our permitting approvals taken care of well ahead of that July date. So we're hoping to have that all taken care of by June if possible. And this is the first of several. So this is kind of the first one we need to address before we can go on to the next submittals to other departments.
All right, we're the easiest ones too.
I hope so.
I hope not.
All right, so do I have a motion to continue this until May?
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor of continuing this hearing until our next meeting in May? Charlie Higginson.
Aye.
Dave McMorris, aye. Matt Watkins.
Aye.
Woody Chidick.
Aye.
Lee Dars.
Aye.
Mike Dickey.
Aye.
Good. All right, we're continued until May. We haven't decided exactly yet when in May, but we will in a few minutes figure that out. We're also going to be talking about going to a combination in-person and virtual meetings so that we get back a little bit to the traditional way that we did these, but keep this option where people can join on Zoom, which I think has really opened up participation in the community quite a bit. So hopefully we'll be able to keep that.
May I ask a question?
Certainly.
We continue on to May. Do you anticipate being able to make a decision next month?
Probably not. What we usually do
Mhm.
is we will continue until next month. If at the end of that hearing, if we think we have everything that we need, we'll continue it on to the next month for a draft decision. And then at that point, at the end of that meeting, we'll close the hearing, deliberate, and have a decision.
Okay. And will that preclude us from making our submittals to the other departments if we don't have a decision made on zoning?
Oh, no, not at all.
Okay,
You're gonna get it.
They can all run in parallel and concurrently, so.
okay, great.
All right, well,
Sounds
thank
like
you.
initially we don't have any requests for more information on any of the 3 criteria initially or additional language or anything. Is that kind of what I'm?
I haven't heard anything yet. Woody, do you have any questions? Or?
Not really, no.
Okay. Okay. Very good. So let's go back to our agenda. If I can find it. So I think this closes our hearing, and ends our hearings for this evening, correct?
Yes.
So I'm trying to bring up the agenda on my.
Next thing is deliberation, I think, of any closed hearings.
That's right. We have several deliberations for tonight. So what's the first one, Julia?
It will be 33 Forest Notch.
Okay. And Julia, can you tell me which email that draft was in? What date?
Hold on one moment. Let me look. It should have been sent out last Tuesday. So that was the
25th.
yes, the 25th.
Okay, here we go. So 33 Forest Notch. Has everyone had a chance to review that? It's a very summary decision, but I think it covers everything that we need to have covered. This is a pretty straightforward application.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty benign or intelligent expansion. They're really not encroaching any further, laterally or any of that sort. I applaud them for confining, keeping it de minimis.
Yeah, I think even visually it's pretty benign. All right, so do I have a motion on accepting a motion on approving the special permit for 33 Forest Notch?
Also move.
Second?
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor? Charlie Higginson,
Aye.
Dave McMorris, aye, Matt Watkins,
Aye.
Woody Chidick,
Aye.
and Mike Dickey.
Aye.
All right. So that one's finished, and next we have is the next the 80 North Main Street dock?
Yes.
Okay, we have a draft on that one. This is a pretty simple and reasonable dock, especially compared to what we've seen lately. Anybody have any questions on this one or comments on the draft?
No, and I think I mentioned it was almost the exact footprint as we had approved at the parcel next door. It did meet all the criteria that we typically check. So,
all right, can I have a motion to approve the dock special permit for 80 North Main?
so moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, Charlie Higginson,
Aye.
Matt Watkins,
Aye.
Dave McMorris, aye, Woody Chidick,
Aye.
Lee Darst,
Aye.
and Mike Dickey.
Aye.
All right. So next we have 95 Atlantic Avenue. Okay, anybody have any comments or questions or deliberations about this one?
No, I reviewed the decision and I know we didn't have any follow-ups for additional information at tonight's meeting, so I thought draft decision looked good.
All right. Anybody else? All right, I'll move we grant the special permit for 95 Atlantic Avenue. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Charlie Higginson,
Aye.
Dave McMorris, aye, Matt Watkins,
Aye.
Woody Chidick,
Recused.
oh, okay, Lee Darst,
Aye.
and Mike Dickey.
Aye.
All right, so that one's done. And we don't have any others to deliberate tonight, correct?
Correct.
So next we have the meeting minutes from February 4th. Everyone had a chance to look through those?
Yeah, I only had one comment on page 6 of 7. Down toward the bottom of the page, it says correspondence to the ZBA follow-up. Mr. Hallen gave a brief update on the status. They would like to use the sign. Neither the location nor who they are was mentioned. I think it would be useful to indicate the proposed, well, the owners of this property as well as its address, in case we need to refer to this.
Yeah, because
later.
we actually were talking about two different signs for a little while too, so that's
Yeah.
a good point to clarify that a little bit.
I think, Woody, that applicant is applying, and you might see it at the next zoning board
Okay.
meeting, if
Right.
that helps.
Well, yeah, but I think our minutes from the last meeting should reflect the address, who the applicant may be, and or who owns the sign as we sit here and where it is, because that could be any place in town.
Well, I think also the difficult part about that is the original complaint had anonymous on it. So, we're putting, this complaint in without someone making the complaint. But, I think we know the address. I have spoken with the owner of a business, and they have applied for right now the sign that we spoke of is covered, and although it's still there, it's not in use.
Was that the subject of the letter that was in our packet from you?
It wasn't, yeah, I sent a follow-up letter.
No, I just wasn't sure what.
That was the one on the corner of 3A and Sawyer Street.
My only point is that it'd be nice to have a.
I'll move that we amend the minutes on that so that the first sentence reads, Mr. Hallen gave a brief update on the status of the sign at the corner of Sawyer Street and 3A on the property owned by the Stop and Shop Plaza.
Yeah, that would sum it up.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a frame of reference.
All right, sir. Do I have a second on that amendment?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Charlie Higginson,
Aye.
Dave McMorris, aye. Matt Watkins,
Aye.
Woody Chidick, Lee Darst,
Aye.
and Mike Dickey.
Aye.
All right.
I would like to just note that I think the more complex hearings we have, Julia's doing a great job of summarizing the hearings. Easy to read, thorough, etc. So
I agree. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you're getting the nuance in and everything, and it's very good. All right. So next. After the minutes, we have the discussion of future meetings format.
well, we also had the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. According to my agenda, at least.
That's right, yeah.
Yes, so, this is a discussion of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, scheduled to go before annual town meeting this spring 2025. And I have a summary from Cassandra, if I could read that to provide any information. Hold on 1 second. Okay, so this zoning amendment changes 2 sections. Both changes are to comply with the state. This section of the bylaw was amended at special town meeting in December. However, we were notified by the state mid-January that there were new dates that need to be included, as well as a section that would need to be amended to be in line with the new model bylaw. First, section B includes updated dates to the referenced firm map panels, the new flood insurance rate map, that's abbreviated to firm FIRM, and flood insurance study, abbreviated to FIS, will be effective July 8th, 2025, which is why the date is being amended to show the future date. Communities participating in the National Flood Insurance Program, abbreviated to NFIP, are required to update their local regulations to adopt the new maps and study. Every community in this watershed participates in the NFIP. And then second, section R, page 9, amends the section regarding variances to building code floodplain standards. This update is in line with the state's model bylaw and largely focuses on the state building code. And both amended sections were completed by the MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, the regional planning agency that Cohasset is a part of, through a grant that we received.
I've got a question for you on page 2. And I don't know quite how this works, but there are 2 references to a report dated July 8th, 2025, which hasn't happened yet. Do you mean 2024 or do you mean a report to be issued on July 8th, 2025?
I don't have that answer. That's something I'd have to confirm with Cassandra.
Sure. Well, you might, yeah, just check on it. It seems kind of unlikely that there would be a report dated 3 months hence.
So Cassandra mentioned that the new flood insurance rate map and flood insurance study will be effective January 8th, 2025, which is why the date
Oh, okay.
is being amended to show the future date.
I get
Sorry,
you.
I just needed to reread that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you could always say the report effective July 8th, 2025. To be effective or whatever. Yeah, it's a small point. I mean, it's just, you know, I'm not sitting here trying to nitpick you, but
I think we also, Eric Carlson from the state did review and make, suggest the changes that Cassandra put in place. So it wasn't.
Yeah, no, okay.
He wanted to make it comply, so, it wasn't, they kind of made some, that was some of the changes that they had made too from the state.
And then the changes that are in, like, I'm looking at it, section R. I mean, I kind of see that it crosses out the different criteria for variances to to building code floodplain standards. And I guess just in summary, kind of says that we'll reach out to the state to receive, written documentation and then store that at the town. I guess I don't know if that's a question for you, John. I don't fully follow what that change is or.
I think July 1, the 10th edition of the building code takes effect, and the new floodplain changes will come in on that at that point. Some of them are in print now, but they really don't take effect till July 1 of 2025. So I think that's what he's probably taken in. They adopted the National Floodplain Code and that portion of it.
But did it used to be? It used to be that they would come to the town and have to show these 3 or 4 criteria, and now we kind of defer to the state. Am I following that right? Or
well, I think some of the changes that the state made was, I think, for example, the clearance for a structure instead of being 1 foot is now 2 feet in certain zones. So that was one of the changes. So that all it was updating our existing. So the same state codes that we had were just updated with the national code. So that's what I believe he's talking about with the changes in the building code.
yeah, because I didn't study the
changes were pretty minor.
I looked at it a little bit just to see if there were any kind of surprises that might come down the road. And I guess it crosses out like variance to floodplain development regulations shall only be issued upon, and some of our typical criteria like showing of good and sufficient cause the determination that failure to grant the variance would result in hardship. But I mean, I don't think we typically see like variances for floodplain.
And I think I think they eliminated the variance in the velocity zone. That might have been part of it, but I could double check on it. I think it was fairly minor, but it was just an update that they had gone through.
Yeah.
Has there been discussion, I guess, with the planning board about any changes that we might need to make to the zoning? The dimensional chart on the zoning for buildings that have to be raised in the floodplain. Raised by, I mean, RAISED.
Yeah, or maybe put another, in other words, where do you start measuring?
Right. And if it's got to be, what, now 2 feet above the flood level?
I think where it starts now is 2 feet above the lowest girt, if you will, on the first floor, above the floodplain. So if your floodplain is 9, your lowest girt would be 11, and that would be the start of the structure.
And then the height, John, you'd measure it from that, let's say 11-foot base point.
It doesn't really, well, I think it's a combination of our zoning bylaw and how the states read it, and that's kind of up to you to interpret some of it.
The state doesn't care about height as much as the base point.
Right.
The elevation.
I mean, we measure from the
average grade.
ground level. Right, average
The
grade.
lower
But
odd.
if you're over water, are you measuring at high tide, low tide, flood stage? What?
Yeah, and that's the, well, again, they're usually only underwater at certain times. You know, it's not always underwater, but I think it would be measured from the existing average grade, and then if they need relief from that, then it would have to be granted by you guys if it's above the 35 feet.
But what's the average grade? You mean it's a mean high water?
No, the average grade of the ground around the building.
Okay.
And then there, but I'll reach out to.
I think it would be helpful to get clarification, whichever way makes sense for the planning board, et cetera, because I could see litigation for and against, and an angry neighbor, and I don't know. I mean, it'd be helpful for us to know where we start measuring, and it'd be helpful for the applicant in case there were an appeal.
Yeah. I'll reach out to Eric Carlson. I see him usually once a month anyway for some other stuff, and just get a definition from him, so that way we could at least get that and see if we can marry the 2 points.
All right. So are we done with the zoning bylaw change? So next is our meeting dates. So we can, if we change to Mondays, we can do hybrid or in person only, but I think probably hybrid meetings. How does everyone feel about that?
Very much in favor of a hybrid.
What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think they could be beneficial maybe on in my mind, I was thinking maybe like on a quarterly basis, you know? I think that as I think back of us gathered in the town hall basement, trying to see some of those plans, they're actually sometimes easier to see here on the computer. And then obviously, you know, some of our late nights, it's good to be done when you're done. But, you know, I think Lee and I bumped into each other a month ago, picking up our packets and kind of, we hadn't had personal contact in forever, which is a little strange for a board. So I think maybe some happy medium would make sense, whether it's, you know, 3 of the 12 meetings a year or, you know, something along those lines we could do in person. But I understand. I do a lot of public meetings with, you know, in the PR world, and I know the town has the logistics dialed down pretty well, but it can be a little bit clunky to be in person and trying to appease / you know, kind of manage the online Zoom crowd. It's probably a little more manageable to have just the remote meeting, but I think I like I'm a people person, so I do like seeing everybody. So I think maybe that kind of combination of maybe 3 a year or something might make sense.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I mean, I think the remote, I mean, even tonight there was 22 participants, and, you know, with the exception of the Sandy Beach meeting, we never had that many people. I always look at all the people that are participating, and sometimes we've had 60 people participating when it's been something really big here. So I think that having it by Zoom gives a lot, we get a lot more people in town. I mean, hardly anyone ever really came to the basement unless it was, you know, for their own hearings. So, and also I agree with, I mean, I don't think I've met Michael Dickey in person. I'm pretty sure I haven't. So,
yeah, believe me, yeah, you haven't missed anything.
He's still my heart.
But so that is kind of bizarre. But on the other hand, I agree with Matt. That we definitely, I think the information is presented more concisely and for us to follow online. And I agree that maybe 3 a year in person. But I think actually we're doing a better, you know, public service by being on Zoom. So
I think that, I mean, I don't think that we should have just in-person meeting. I think that at the very least, we should have hybrid if we're not doing just exclusively Zoom. Because I agree, I think our doing these by Zoom makes it much easier for people who are interested in a particular hearing to be heard. You know, they can check in and out and see when we come to the one that they're interested in, rather than having to hang around the hallway at town hall. I think it's a really good service to the community. On the other hand, it is nice to be together in person from time to time. So I agree that we should do at least a little bit of the hybrid and continue with our Zoom meetings as well. What do you think, Charlie?
I like the hybrid. I'd like to see it in operation. So I would suggest we decide on hybrid for this next meeting, and seeing how that goes, make a longer-term decision.
Okay. And if we did to do a hybrid, we would do it at Wilcox Commons. Is that right, Julia?
Yeah, we'd be using the same room that the select board uses, which is, I believe, the chart room, the larger room next to the point room.
Okay. I'm not old enough to go in that building, so
What would we require? What
Sooner
would we
than you
require?
think.
Yeah. What's required of the applicant? Do they get a choice as to whether they want to present on Zoom or come in person? Is that probably?
To my knowledge, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Julie.
I believe they can attend either virtually or in person. We have a spare laptop if an applicant needs to share their screen, or if they bring their own laptop, they can join as a panelist and share that way. Because staff does not present material for the applicant.
I think, Dave, there is a large screen in the selectmen's, in the meeting room too, that is pretty visible too, as opposed to the old, you know, tripod with the plans up on the 2 foot by 3 foot pedestal. You know, so again, it is a pretty good view from that point to, you know, kind of sharing the screen live. So.
All right. Okay. I mean, I think, you know, especially like with this, certainly with the storage facility. I mean, we get somebody in Tennessee, we get, you know, architects that are not nearby. It makes it a lot more convenient for the applicants to bring in their whole team from wherever they all are. So that's, I think, having that capacity is important. Okay, that said, if we do hybrid meetings, we have to do them on Monday. If we're doing Zoom meetings, we can do those on Tuesdays. Does anyone have a problem with either Monday or Tuesday? No?
No.
That Charlie's idea is a good one. Let's try the next one as a hybrid and then see what happens, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Our take is. There are advantages to in-person, particularly if there are plans that are complicated. I mean, site plans and other things where somebody's trying to say, if you look over here and, you know, follow it. But there are other hearings that really don't benefit from in-person meetings, but see what happens. I mean, I don't know.
Okay. All right, so let's plan to do our next meeting on Monday, May 5th. Does that sound right, Julia?
Yes.
Okay. Obviously, the submittal deadline is already passed. Do we have anything other than that? Is there another doc or something?
Yeah, there's another doc that came in for 130 Beach Street. There's also a special permit that just came in for 55 Smith Place. And that's all for new material.
Okay. So we'll have the 2 King Street applications, the dock, and Smith Place.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so our next meeting is Monday, May 5th, in person at Wilcott Commons, in person for board members unless somebody can't make it, and I see no problem with people, board members joining by Zoom if it's
right
more practical for them.
Either that or you'll have to stop going to Florida.
Well, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I figure so. I support what you just said then.
Yeah, and I haven't heard back from Carolyn Murray regarding that stipulation for the chair being present when it's a hybrid meeting. So I'll follow up with her to see if I can get that answer before the next meeting.
Okay.
But
I think that's correct, but it also could be either the chair or a designated chair for that meeting.
Yeah.
That meets the qualification.
So whoever is acting as the chair has to be in person.
Yeah, that was my understanding too.
Okay. All right.
And then just to confirm, so I'll leave the June meeting to be determined following the May meeting.
Sure, let's do that. See how we feel about it after our May meeting.
Yeah, the summer might end up getting tougher, but see what we think, you know.
And can I just intervene one last time?
Of course.
Regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, Tracy Connors is looking to get the board's vote into the warrant prior to annual town meeting, which is May 12th. And I believe the last day to post the warrant for annual town meeting is May 5th, which we would be meeting in the evening and that deadline would pass. I don't want to apply pressure for the board to vote either to recommend or not recommend. But would you consider voting today, or would you like to continue? And then the vote might not be in the warrant, but it could be mentioned at town meeting that it was either recommended or not recommended by the Board of Appeals.
All right, well, let me just check. So we can vote on it because it was on the agenda, is that right?
Yeah.
All right. And my understanding is that this is something that we need to do in order to comply with the National Flood Insurance Program. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
Does anyone have any concerns or questions or problems with the zoning bylaw amendment?
I'm a big fan of complying with the law.
There we go.
No challenge authority for you, huh?
Got an exception in this day and age, Michael. All right, well, I'd move that we recommend the adoption of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment at town meeting.
Seconded.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Charlie,
Woody Chitik, aye.
Matt Watkins,
Aye.
Dave McMorris, aye. Lee Darce,
Aye.
Mike Dickey.
Aye.
That everybody? All right.
You may have your thumb in front of your camera, David.
No, possibly. Okay, I think
I hope it was your thumb.
so that's our agenda for this evening. Does anybody have anything else that they want to discuss?
Adjourn.
All right, there you go, Charlie.
All right, Charlie. Good man.
Right.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Charlie Higginson,
In favor.
Dave McMorris, aye. Matt Watkins,
Aye.
Woody Chitik,
Aye.
Lee Darce,
Aye.
Mike Dickey.
Aye.
Yay. All right, we're adjourned.
All right, I'll look
everybody.
forward to seeing you in the flesh next month.
I
Lee.
know, we get to meet you.
I know, wow.
Gotta bring your A game, Mike, you know?
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
I know.
Thank you.